Let us start a new chapter called Units and Measurements. So this chapter deals with the system of units which are used in physics and the various types of measurements which are used in the study of physics. So before we understand the units, let us see some basic thing about this chapter. Here we define physical quantities, and these physical quantities are further subdivided into two parts. One is fundamental quantities and the other one derived quantities. Now you will very often come across this term physical quantities. Now what are physical quantities? Let us first understand, then you will understand about fundamental quantities and derived quantities. If I define physical quantities, so the definition of physical quantity you will get in the book. We simply want to understand what are physical quantities. Actually, these are the basic building blocks of physics. All physical quantities actually govern the study of physics. If you don't know these physical quantities, you won't be able to study physics. Now what are those? Examples. Examples of physical quantities: length, time, mass, velocity, force, acceleration, momentum, and so on. All these things which are closely associated with physics are called as the physical quantities. Length, time, mass, velocity, force, acceleration, momentum, work, energy, power, all these are termed as the physical quantities. But out of all these physical quantities, some quantities are categorized as fundamental quantities, some as derived quantities. Now what are fundamental quantities and what are derived quantities? All are physical quantities, everything is physical quantity, but here we need to understand some are fundamental, some are derived. Now what are fundamental quantities? Fundamental quantities are the basic quantities or the independent quantities. Derived quantities are those quantities which are dependent on the fundamental quantities. I will explain, you will understand. So I repeat, fundamental quantities are the independent quantities. Derived quantities are certain quantities which are dependent on the fundamental quantities. Now to understand the difference between fundamental and derived quantities, let us take the example of in English. See, in English language, to study English, all the alphabets A, B, C, D up to Z Now all these 26 alphabets, they are the fundamental quantities in English. If you don't know A, B, C, D up to Z, you won't be able to study English. So fundamental quantities in English. If somebody asks, what are the fundamental quantities in English? You will say, sir, A, B, C, D up to Z. How many fundamental quantities are there? You will say 26 fundamental quantities. But what are the derived quantities? All words are the derived quantities in English. Now, why words are derived quantities in English? Like if I use a word called study, this is a word. This is a derived quantity because the word study involves how many alphabets of English? S, T, U, D, Y. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 alphabets of English are used to make this word study. So the word study is derived by the use of 5 fundamental quantities in English. Similarly, if you take any word, sincere. Now again, this is a derived quantity in English. Sincere. The word sincere comprises of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 alphabets of English. So you can understand that to construct any word, you have to use some of the basic alphabets in English. So in English language, all the alphabets from A to Z are the fundamental quantities, and in English language, all words are the derived quantities in English, because you cannot construct any word without using these fundamental quantities. Similarly, in physics, we have certain fundamental quantities. So in physics, you see that there are certain set of fundamental quantities. So let us see how many fundamental quantities are there in physics. So just compare with this. So if I study how many fundamental quantities are there in physics, in physics, there are 7 fundamental quantities. Remember, there are 7 fundamental quantities. So, to study English, you need to take the help of 26 alphabets. These 26 alphabets, A to Z, are the fundamental quantities in English. And similarly to study physics, you need to take the help of 7 basic or the fundamental quantities. And those 7 fundamental quantities are, first is, number 1 is mass. Then length, then time, then electric current, temperature, amount of substance, so you see those mass, length, time, amount of substance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7th one is luminous intensity. So you remember, memorize these 7 fundamental quantities, and these 7 fundamental quantities are used to get these derived quantities. So we will slowly learn how to get these derived quantities using these 7 fundamental quantities. Now the last one is the luminous intensity. This is related to light. Amount of substance, as you know, electric current, temperature, mass, length and time.